Welcome to the Tesla Beat podcast number 54. We missed you all last week. Some of us, actually, one of our special guests today was out there in Austria and Germany with me visiting the Tesla Takeover Europe. So sorry we could not make it. We will give a couple of quick updates from our time there, and I'll give some updates on my experience touring Giga Berlin versus, Austin and Fremont. And then, a lot of stuff, as we know, going on. FSD China coming. We also have Elon's comp plan. We're going to show an interesting clip from CalPER's CEO. Tesla has released a new semi video. And so there's a lot to get into, but I would like to introduce our friend and special guest, Brian Futuraza, formerly My Tesla Weekend. How's it going, Brian?
Doing great. Back, jet lagged as crazy, just like you, and going to bed nice and early and waking up much too early. But I'm having a great time.
Yeah, I think I was telling Brian, I'm going to bed at 9, and I'm like should not be on the road at 9 type, tired. It's really bad at 9 o'clock. But yeah, it's good to be back. Good to be back with the crew. And I think Brian, this is your second time on the show, right?
I think that's right. Yeah. Second
or third time. Well, welcome back.
Second
Thanks for stepping in.
Of course.
Let's jump into it. So again, we weren't here last week, but we did look at the Tesla stock, which has essentially remained flat week over week. And I think a lot of this is just going to be probably stagnant, really going into, what is the ultimate outcome of the comp plan voting, the Kimball Musk voting, pretty much all of the shareholder meeting happening in 2 weeks. So stay tuned for that. I think, like I said, we'll see, some of the things happening then. But ultimately, it's going to be, it'll be really interesting to see what happens. But, at the same time, too, the call out is don't overreact. There's going to be a lot of things that still need to be worked out no matter what ends up happening. So it's not over till it's over. I think that's always the quick reminder there, is that it's not over till it's over. Jumping into the next slide. So something I just wanted to share. So this is a picture of me at Giga Berlin last week with 28 people from all over Asia. We had Singapore, Malaysia, Taiwan, and Japan. And then me and a guy named Chris from Tespla's going with the APAC team to visit Giga Berlin. So I think, it was really a really cool time to be able to get out there and really just get a feeling and a vibe of what Giga Berlin was like. And the interesting thing about this tour was that the people actually putting on the tour, they don't do this full time. This is literally just something they're doing on the side. So when they're doing these tours, they are taking time out of their day to do it. So, but this is probably by far the best tour at a factory of Tesla that I've ever been at, because they take you from start to finish, the beginning of the Model Y line all the way to the very end, to literally when these trucks are pretty much getting loaded onto the trucks. So my personal perception of it, again, biggest differences between Berlin and even Texas was Berlin only has one story, so the ceilings are huge. Versus Texas, it doesn't feel as high. It's just very long. So, Giga Texas feels like at least probably 2-3 times bigger. The big call out is Berlin is growing. It is, they just got some permits to expand. The interesting thing is, and this is probably something that you may or may not know, is that Berlin was literally built on a paper factory. So all of the trees are literally meant to be cut down for paper. And so it's interesting how, they're coming there, and then they're also building the most sustainable factory in all of Europe. All of their water is 100%, recycled. But they are the most sustainable factory probably in all of Europe, if not all of Germany as well. So those are things you just don't hear about. I think the things that stuck out to me the most were, they had 8 giga castings. So that room was insane. And the picture of this is actually where the Model Ys are coming out, because they're done. But yeah, so the Giga castings, they had 8. Those were huge. I think it's also too just how well, like, the actual factory line was just running and how it was smooth. I mean, people are blasting music, they're having a great time. But just things were just moving efficiently. And I think just again the scale of the whole factory was just amazing just to see. They have about 12,000 people working there, 3 or 4 shifts. So it's and my question to them was, hey, are these a lot of Germans working at these factories, or is it people being from all over Europe? And my understanding is it actually was people from all over Europe coming to this place. So again, I don't know out of the 12,000 how many are German versus non-German, but and then one interesting thing too was when I was in Berlin, this little last factor was I was surprised that there wasn't that many Teslas. It's really when you get into maybe other parts, but being an hour away from Giga Berlin, I was really shocked that there was not more Model Ys on the road. So I think that there's still a big opportunity probably in Germany for like market expansion. Again, I don't have the numbers right in front of me. But yeah, like I said, this was by far, I think, the best factory that Tesla has right now. Obviously, when I've gone, and I say that with when I've gone to Austin, you see parts of it, and it's not that it's superficial part of the tour, but typically, they're having a large event, and so I haven't gone through the actual tour. But this event is literally being run by employees who don't do this full time, and even Fremont, they have a whole path, they have a whole cart. So this one was like more raw, and we walked the whole thing. So there was no train or any of that. So yeah, so it was really that was my first impressions of it. I don't know if there's anyone wants to chime in and give any thoughts or impressions, but it's all good if you don't want to. Otherwise we can just go ahead.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share a couple of things. So, like you were saying on the fact that it's a forest, it's not it's a forest in the loosest definition possible. It was a monoculture forest. The trees were planted extremely close together, which is how you get them to sprout as high as they can, as quickly as they can, and it's very bad for natural life. If you go into a forest like that, you do not hear forest sounds because the light doesn't reach the forest floor to create the moss and the other little plants that the normal animals would eat. They're pretty dead inside. So of course, anyone who's thinking that was a bad thing needs to let that go. For every tree they cut down, they planted 2 or 3 somewhere else where they were actually needed and useful. In terms of the size, if you look at it on satellite, it is very big. Not nearly as big as Texas, but very big. But like you were saying, Texas is a vertical structure. It is a multi-floored structure. So inside, it is at least twice the volume in terms of floor space, because it is 2, 3 floors in a lot of places, 4 if you count the mezzanines. And in terms of the sustainability, I'm sure you could find a factory making something that's more sustainable, but not cars. No way would you find more sustainable cars. And the mix of non-Germans to Germans, I think that would be interesting to look at all the manufacturers, because certainly you'll be accused of importing cheap labor from Poland, which is not that far away, or other Eastern European countries who are able to come in and use their EU visa to just work. But I imagine some of that's true everywhere. But what I've seen with Tesla factories is you get the best people from every country, including the very expensive countries where they have plenty of attractive domestic options for employment. It's an exciting company, and I'm definitely not jealous that you got to tour Giga Berlin.
Yeah.
You don't seem jealous at all.
A little. I'm a little
Jeff,
jealous.
were you gonna say something?
Yeah, why didn't you bring Brian with you?
Oh, so John was brought on as part of a group from the Asian countries, and there was no time to coordinate. So I don't know if they would have had a ticket or been able to, but I know I wouldn't have been able to make it.
Yeah, it's not that it happened super last minute, but I just kind of threw in the fact that I was Taiwanese to add me on, and the Taiwan club was coming. But I did bring up my trip earlier to go to Giga Berlin and do it. But yeah, it was specifically the access that you get to go is actually through the owners clubs. So they've only done, I think the guy was telling me, only a couple of thousand people have been through there. It's really been pretty limited on the actual amount of people going through there. Because again, this is not their full-time job. They're maybe doing one or two tours a day, maybe three, but like this is all on pretty much their personal time. All right. Well, here is so Tesla Takeover Europe. We finally made it to Europe. I wanted to quickly show a quick clip from the actual light show, just to 270 Teslas, just all lined up. So let me just, I think Joe may be having some technical issues, but yeah, I think, you saw the show. 270 Tesla. So shout out to Tesla from xlightshow.io. He even said that was the most precise, logo he's ever made in very Austrian perfection fashion. So it took hours of just moving the car 5 feet, 2 feet. They had a drone up there pretty much the whole time. And so, it was pretty crazy just to see that all come together, but really a magical show. Amazing speakers like Brian, Alexandra, Best in Tesla, Lars, Jan from Tesla Fix, Alex Bangula, who's a big European or German car tester. But yeah, there was a bunch of other people that I've missed. But yeah, the Austrian club did an amazing job. But again, very much like, Jeff, I know you're going to experience the Tesla Takeover for the first time this year, but it was truly a global presence. I mean, they sold over 1,200 tickets in their first year. They were running it like our event in year 3. But really, you go out there, and I would say that, Europeans definitely travel and they love driving their cars a lot more than probably Americans. And so we literally saw people traveling 15-hour road trips were not abnormal there. And so it was really, really a blessing to go out there and experience it. But Brian, what was your impression of being out there? Because you've been to the US one versus the Europe one.
I've been to other EV events like Fully Charged. Fully Charged is a very casual event compared to Tesla events. At the Tesla Takeover last year in San Luis Obispo, we had people who had driven out from Florida, like Raphael from Teslatino. But in Europe, we had the same thing. I didn't expect to see people who were driving from Scandinavia, driving from southern Italy, and we had Tetiana was there. She had taken a 20-hour bus ride from Ukraine to then hop on a flight to get to her connection to drive. This is very unusual for an event, especially such a small and new event. And then we had, of course, people flying in from all over the world. Many Asian countries were represented, as you know, and it was crazy. And of course, you've got the amazing vendors showing off modifications that you may only dream of, but some people are going to get, and all kinds of crazy stuff. The neat thing on the light show that we got to see there that I haven't seen before is because the European cars have the matrix headlights enabled. If you looked at that video again, you would see that it's flashing kind of patterns. Those aren't patterns. The headlights say Tesla on the other, projected onto the other cars across from them, which is another neat little effect you can get when your regulations are not insane. So the whole event was wonderful. It was days of just people hanging out, getting to know each other, getting to meet all the people you only see in this little box. And it was a lot of fun. And of course, then, I have to give out my silly merch that says, vote. And
he literally was just handing people this. And then people thought it was like an American political thing. So they stopped. They're like, oh, I'm not American. I was like, no.
It's like, no, that's not what we're doing. And then, of course, I explained the way that you actually run, how Elon can run so many companies is through the power of 3 Elon Musks. You know, you've got to have
Exactly.
some fun with it. And yeah, it was a great event.
All right. So we're going to jump into Joe. Are you there? I think Joe, he may be having some issues, so I'm going to remove him for the time being. Okay, so this was probably one of the bigger news things that broke this week. FSD in China, Tesla is preparing to register its full self-driving software with authorities in China in the run up to its planned rollout of its technology advanced feature this year. 3 people with knowledge of this matter said. Tesla makes push to roll out the advanced full self-driving. And this is some stuff we had heard about, but, you know, as you hear more about this, you know, as we get closer to 8.8, what are your guys' thoughts? I mean, do you like, you know, I've been driving on FSD for what, 3.5 years now, longer than probably most. But the question is more of like, you know, this push versus, you know, when they launched it 3 years ago, it definitely feels a lot more real. And, you know, I think they're a lot more bullish than they have been in the past. But what when you see some of these rumors coming from China, especially because China, I mean, Europe is probably like the worst place to launch anything. That's clearly what we found. Even when I was over there, everything is regulated to a point where you can't move your finger. And then it's just, yeah, with China, to be able to get into China even before Europe, I mean, that's going to be, for an American company to do that, that's crazy.
Yeah, I'd just say a couple things. I think Tesla's working in a pretty logical order of events. You know, get FSD rock solid, stable, and amazing, you know, in its initial, you know, country or offering in North America between the US and Canada, and then expand globally. And while you're doing that, which is a big deal. I mean, this is a huge deal that you can basically, you know, you turn your car on, it's got superhuman capability, you know, in other countries now, and other driving standards and rules and so forth. And I just stopped to think about how, you know, that's incredible. So yeah, China is a priority, you know, rest of Asia, obviously Europe is a priority. So this is imminent, this is happening. And I think the logical order of events is stable in initial country, roll out to other countries, and then really, I think I mean, Elon said it on the earnings call. The conversations about licensing have started with external partners, and I think that only ramps up as people see the capability and the rate of improvement that's occurring with full self-driving right now. So we have a big release imminent coming in the US, 12.4. It's going to add new features. It should be a pretty significant advancement in terms of performance and capability. And so that's step 1. Step 2, expand FSD globally. And then step 3, license partners. And really then now you've laid the groundwork for a robotaxi network starting, you know, potentially in one of those countries, maybe, you know, maybe in the US, but maybe in another country, who knows? But that, to me, that's a logical 3 to 4 steps that are occurring over the next year, probably.
And what I would say is China's an exciting test case because there are so many cars on the road. Tesla has sold a whole lot of volume. And that's great if you can use that training data, but can you get it out of the country? And we just saw them open a new trade zone, which will allow the free exchange of data to be exported. Not unlimited data, not all data, but they've created classes of data, and generalized data, which is what training data would be, can be exported under the current regulations. And that will allow all of the data gathered in China to train the global fleet. And that's a whole lot of units. If you're looking at, let's say I've got the best, I just wrote this algorithm, it is perfect and it will work. All I need is training data. Where am I going to get it? You can't buy that data for any price today because all I would need is a time machine and then the ability to put sensors on millions of cars and let them run for billions of miles. That no one has that advantage. And if we had to back out the advantage of gathering data from China, it would be problematic. It would be costly and prohibitive. So I think that's a big benefit that Tesla has. And if it rolls out in China, if it works in China, the rest of the countries are going to start falling in line, because China has many environments where driving is difficult and chaotic, on the order of San Francisco or worse, on the order of New York City or worse. And this is a big next step, a critical step, and one that could, again, if the compute power is there, if they can make it work, it's going to unlock a whole new era, both for humanity and for the stock.
One question I have to you guys would be, how will, if at all, Tesla be able to utilize the data that is in the US for China, or in vice versa? Are they even allowed to? Is there privacy things with that? Or at that point, is it just data and metrics that are privatized anyways? Like, how can they potentially marriage the two? Again, I know we're not experts here on data, but the question is more of like, do they need a fresh set just for China? Obviously they do, but can they go in with a benchmark of like, here's the generalization for, the algorithm. Here's a data set or data sets that they can use, or does it have to be fresh?
So that's the beauty of AI, is it can speak languages it doesn't know, especially when they are human languages. And I don't mean a language, I mean any kind of behavior. They took ChatGPT and fed it a list of all the proteins that exist and said, hey, what's the next protein in this list? And it came up with some suggestions, and 2 of them turned out to be actual proteins that had not been discovered. So there are, and you can do the same thing with all kinds of data. They took, they showed it pictures of sheet music and said, write a song. And it said, well, based on the sheet music I've seen, the AI doesn't know what sheet music is. It doesn't know what music is. It just knows that these are patterns that go together. So hopefully there's an underlying human element to driving that would allow it to translate without specific data. That's how it can drive on a new road it's never seen before. But I'd be curious to hear what you guys think.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that they've designed the program to where they can set it anywhere. And it just, because you got to remember, this is all by vision. It's not, they don't have any pre-mapped anything. So as long as it understands the country, then, and they put those parameters in, it's still going by how people drive. And yeah, I think Tesla has figured it out, for the most part. And they just needed, legally, they needed that information from that company just so they can get the algorithm going. But I think they have it sorted. They just right now, there's Korea has the visualizations. Like that was posted this morning. So I think they're good, man. I think vision was the way to do it. I think if they were trying to Waymo it, it would have been way more difficult. Like trying to map everything and trying to understand like this and that, and if this then that, like that would have been way more difficult. But the way they're going about it, you can pretty much drop that program in any country and it'll watch how other people drive, and it'll drive like that. And that's the beauty of vision.
Yeah. Jeff, any thoughts? Are you good?
No, I'm good. I agree with Brian and Joe. Just very scalable solution. Again, both with volume, miles, number of vehicles, and then the economics to be able to do it. It's going to be a profitable system very, very early on, almost instantaneously, and the others, all right, can't say that. And that's what I always get confused when I hear analysts talk about other self-driving efforts or other robo-taxis. Do you just look at the 20-second YouTube clip, or you're actually like looking at the economics and understanding, is it something that's actually profitable or not? I think you've got to be able to answer the bell on both.
I would add to what I would add to what
Sorry,
Joe
Ryan.
said, which is, sorry about that, Jeff. What Joe was saying is, yes, if you're trying to millimeter accurate map the entire world in LiDAR, we saw how long it took Waymo to do that in one city. And guess what? Tomorrow the map changes in 1,000 places, 1,000,000 places. And then if you're trying to add if-then statements to cover every driving scenario in the entire world, you're going to run into obstacles. I saw people who would write language generators 15, 20 years ago, and at a glance, they were great. But at a second glance, they were the exact same. And on a third glance, you realize they were garbage. And it just wasn't scalable. Certainly not when if you were to try and add other languages or other applications to it. But if that's the whole point of the artificial intelligence, is for it to be able to make a decision based on a scenario it's never seen before. And that's what's going to be the advantage.
Yeah, very Tesla fashion. I mean, I think Elon had said at some point it's not going to need. You could literally drop a pin and just give it the coordinates, and it will be able to navigate there. That's the goal. I think that's what he said on that. What was it? That V11 or V12 demo ride that he did around Palo Alto. That's what some of the stuff. But yeah, that's what is crazy. And even now, to be honest, if you let FSD drive and you don't put in a map, it'll go places. Obviously, sometimes you'll have to take over maybe at some point, but it can still just go. And so, yeah, it's pretty crazy. So getting into, I feel like the closer we get to this, this voting and people, becoming vocal about voting no for Elon's comp plan, this is probably that. Yeah, I'm not going to like unfollow you because you disagree or whatever, but it really feels really bad. Like when you think of like what these people are saying. And again, it's, here's CalPERS CEO. I'm going to play the clip. This is a clip from CNBC. But she had a 10x run up for her investors, for her stock, right? For, for this fund. And, now she's going to be voting against Elon Musk's plan because, things have changed. So I just thought that this was like, this is when you want to just like fall off your chair. But here's the clip.
Is commensurate with the performance of the company.
Did you vote for it in 2018?
I believe we did vote for it in 2018.
Okay,
but this is about long-term value creation.
Hold on.
Okay.
But do you believe you were duped in 2018?
No. I believe we used the information we had available and made the best choice.
Okay, so here's what I find so interesting about this particular choice. 73%, I believe, of the shareholders voted in favor of it in 2018. A judge has said that shareholders were not informed properly.
Right.
If you talk to most shareholders, by the way, especially big shareholders, they say we were not duped. We understood completely what we were doing, and we were on board with this. Now that this opportunity has arrived on your doorstep to actually rethink this, if you will, there's a view that, maybe we're not getting the value we thought we should. You thought you should get it, but he's worked, by the way, under the assumption that he was hitting the numbers and dealing with the contract. If I told you that you were being paid a certain amount of money in 2018, and then I called you and said, actually, you know what, we're not going to give you that money anymore, what would you do?
It's a great question. I would go to my board. I would talk with my board.
So CalPERS, just for those that don't know, it's California Public Employees Retirement System. So they have, I believe, one of the bigger funds for retirement. But either way, it's a big fund for, they have a lot of votes. And yet in 2018, they voted in favor of it. And then now she's saying, hey, long term, where they see the value of the stock. So they're voting something different. And then the host of CNBC literally puts the question back on her. And you can see her start to, just kind of like freak out a little bit because now it can actually relate. So imagine, and only God knows how much she's making, but you take the last 7 years of pay and then tell her, well, you didn't hit your metrics. We're going to pull all that money back. And anyone in their right mind wouldn't go for that or allow that to happen. But what are your thoughts in seeing this? And, again, it's okay if you disagree too with any of my opinions.
Well, real quick, I'll tell you, that actually it came out that CalPERS didn't vote for the package in 2018. So she didn't even know. She didn't even know. She was just saying that, and it
Okay.
and she didn't even know her own company and what they had done previously. So that makes it even worse. But the then you look at the fact that she's just saying these things, and I mean, and kudos to him, man. He broke it down like, hey, you know what I mean? Like, this is what happened. The man has worked. It's not like he didn't do the work. And if you look at 2018 versus today's numbers, like, who's going to say that he didn't fulfill his end of the bargain? You know what I mean? Like, so again, you know, this becomes a vote of vindictive people, and it's really a, you know, I mean, like, it's really political, and it sucks to say that, because, you know, Elon's been political anyways, but to use this as a way to spite him, or to like slap his wrist for the things that he's done lately is just kind of, it's mismanagement at best, but it's really, really uncool.
So with the CalPERS lady there, so I don't know anything about them specifically, other than that they have almost $500 billion under management. When he was saying, well, what if when John was saying, well, what if she didn't hit her targets? No, forget that. What if she exceeded her targets? What if she hit all her targets? What if the part of the fund she was managing 10x'd, and then we said, yeah, but I don't like X, Y, or Z. So for the last 7 years, you get nothing. I mean, zero. You get nothing. What I do is I always ask people, okay, you don't like the compensation, you know, 56 billion is too much. Stop saying that number. It's not 56 billion. That's based on share price, and not even today's share price. That's based on it when it was higher. It is more like 2 billion. That's what was accounted for. It's already been logged on the books. And if he is allowed to exercise those options, he will pay in something like $6 billion. Tesla will get fresh cash. And then who else would win from this, apart from the company having more cash on hand, apart from us being able to move past this chapter? The tax man would win, because it's not going to be 56 billion. In the future, it's going to be worth more than that. His shares don't have to be exercised until 2028, and he can't sell them until 5 years after he exercises them, meaning those shares are going to be worth more. And the tax man's going to get almost half, at least 38% of it. So we're talking tens of billions that will go into the federal coffers that wasn't there before. And who's paying for? Well, this company has only sold this many. That's this much dollars per car ever sold. No, it's not. Those aren't real dollars. I'm the one paying Elon. My shares are the one that will be diluted to pay him on the deal that we agreed on. It was, Alexandra keeps saying, a deal's a deal. And yes, a deal's a deal. There's a reason people in unsavory professions demand payment up front. It's because if you don't get your payment up front, this can happen.
Yeah, I'd like to think that the people that are holding the stock, your shareholder, usually when you hold shares in a company, you like the company, you like the products, you like the balance sheet, you like its performance, you like something. You like it. And I'd like to think that the fact that the company is basically 11x'd over this time period, that the people that are holding the stock, for the most part, I'm not saying we're going to get, some, 90+% or something, but for the most part, that those people will be like, all right, like it's done well. I'm holding the stock of the company. I'm going to vote in favor. I can't imagine that there's a majority of people holding the stock that don't like the company, that don't like its leadership, I just can't imagine. Like, why are you holding the stock then? If you don't like these people. So, and I know there could be some reasons to do that, but I just don't think that that's in the majority. So I think this is going to work out. I think one of the bigger stories, and it's being told through a lot of the work that Alexander's doing, is just the number of people that are disenfranchised, that can't vote, that hold shares in the company, but their banking institutions don't allow them to vote. And that vote to move to Texas is dependent on the total number of shares to vote against. It's not just the percent of people who are voting. So anyway, to me, that's the other big story here is that I think his compensation package is going to pass. It doesn't mean you shouldn't be out there voting your shares. This is an urgent thing. It's important. It'll probably be closer than before. I would hate to see what would happen if the vote didn't go through. I think you obviously you'd be sending a message to Elon in terms of where he should be spending his time, because he has control at SpaceX. He has control at these other newer companies post Tesla that he's in charge of, and there's a monopoly on his time. Like his time is valuable, and he would want to spend it at a place that values him and will compensate him for growing that entity. And if Tesla's not going to compensate him for doing it, just put yourself in those shoes, and where are you going to spend a majority of your time? Then you would consider spending it elsewhere. And so I don't think it's one of these things where if the vote doesn't go his way the next day, he's leaving. But I think this is more about he only has so much time in the day and so much time in the week and the month. Where is he going to spend it? He's going to spend it where he believes he's valued and where he thinks he can drive growth.
And I would add to that, there's people who bought at 300, 400 a share. I think a lot of those have a real bad taste in their mouth and may vote no out of spite. Just, if I'm going down, I'm going to burn the whole place down with me. And I get it, but a lot of these are ride or die investors, and they're saying, you know what, die. Let's do it. Let's burn this. And I obviously think that's a pretty foolish idea. I would like to agree with what you just said, though. It's not that he would leave, but part of his heart definitely would. And that's not a criticism of Elon or a praise of Elon. That's just human nature. That's what people do. If you don't feel appreciated somewhere, why give 110%? Especially if what you're being given back is 0%. And we see that all the time as well. You've seen it with athletes who are fantastic athletes, but they're not appreciated and their performance shows. So yeah, I think that's all valid points.
Yeah. Has there been any, over the past week, anything more insightful information that you've received that has either changed your opinion or given you more pause or even maybe more frustration? I feel like at least over the past couple of weeks, the more this stuff is unpacked, it's just, there's probably more frustration and stuff. And I think, you start to see the campaign. I literally just got an email from Tesla this morning too, to vote. I don't know if you guys did too. But it's, I think just because they're doing something doesn't necessarily mean that the vote isn't going the right way. I think they're just trying to do their best to inform people, because it's not just the comp plan. It's, it has board implication. It also has, where will Tesla be incorporated, whether it's Delaware versus Texas. And clearly Delaware is going into like a bad hole, I guess is the best way to put it. It's just, they're not headed in the right direction. Again, this company is headquartered out of Texas, California at one point, and they incorporate in Delaware. So there is a thing to be said about people incorporating in Delaware. It was seen as a place to be clearly friendly to corporations. But so I don't know. Again, that's just a question to the panel. If not, that's totally fine.
I think that for me personally, the biggest thing that came out of this for me was what Jeff was talking about, and what Alexandra has highlighted, is that there's just so many people who can't vote. And that's just so bizarre that these companies are taking their money from shareholders, but not giving them, the right to their shares and what they can do with that shares. So that to me has been like the biggest thing. I don't, like Brian, I don't think that he would leave. I think it would definitely make him a little saddened working for Tesla, but I think most of his fortune, like Jeff has pointed out before, like everything's tied up into Tesla. So I don't think he would just disown Tesla. I think it would just be like well, you're not going to get what you got before out of me. You know what I mean? And people already kind of felt like he was lagging anyway in his attention span, but I don't see that. I think like for what Tesla has achieved and for what has gone on over these past few years, like it's been stellar. Like, you know what I mean? Like Tesla as a whole has been amazing. Like, you know what I mean? Like they're crushing numbers every single year. They're outselling everybody. The nearest competitor ain't even from this country. BYD is in China. You know what I mean? Like there's just no competition. And everything that they're doing is like top notch. So it's like what's the problem? You know what I mean? But then you realize like it's personal. You know what I mean? Like people have this vindictive, this vendetta about him and what he tweets and or posts or whatever. And you know what I mean? And because clearly it's not the company. The company's doing great. And so people just don't like him and what he says. And it's like, you don't even know how Jeff Bezos feels or how Mary Barra feels politically. You know what I mean? But luckily for us, we get this guy. We get this guy who's open and honest, for better or for worse. You know what I mean? Like to his detriment, obviously, but I wouldn't rather have it anyway. Elon's going to be Elon, and he's always been this way. And to think that he hasn't been or that he shouldn't be is just kind of like, I don't know, just kind of wild that people want to muzzle like him for that. And he's one of the greatest minds of our time. And it's like, what are you thinking? Like, this is just going to be so bad for the history books, like this moment in time.
It's going to be a weird one. So on the problem with the people who can't vote, Alexandra had an opportunity to talk to everyone at the Austria takeover. And she, of course, was asking, have you voted? Can you vote? What is your bank? And worse than the banks that won't let you vote are the banks that will let you vote if you jump through 100 hoops. Because they can still tell you, oh, no, you can absolutely vote. Stay with us. If you can't vote, you just leave, go to another bank, take your money with you. But if you have to do it that way, if you've got one that makes you jump through hoops, they know that most people will not. And that's in its own way worse. What I'd like to know is, since Elon and Kimball are not voting, do their shares count towards the quorum? Because they own a significant percentage. And that 13% for Elon plus whatever Kimball has would be a lot to do it. The move to Texas, I don't think Tesla has made a sufficiently compelling case. I talked with Alexandra about this. Because it's more wonky. It's a little harder to wrap your head around. It's easy to say, well, they've got activist judges in Delaware, but they don't. They have one activist judge that we know of. And activist judges are not unique to Delaware. You will find them all over the place making weird decisions all the time. That's what appeals courts are for. And I'm confident that, cautiously optimistic, I guess is more true than confident, that on appeal this would still be won, that Tesla would still win this case in Delaware. Because Texas, remember, Texas still doesn't even allow direct sales of Tesla, which is very unusual. You would think a free, open, and welcoming state, a Tesla-friendly state, would have sorted that out by now. And their legislature only convenes every 2 years. So maybe this is the year that it gets done, or next year, I forget. But the big thing is, with Elon, who he is, what he is, yes, he's a package deal. I don't like what he said about pineapple on pizza, whatever it is. Fine. You have to take the good with the bad, and the good is so overwhelming. I know a lot of people who say, I really dislike this thing or this thing, but I'm still net positive on Elon, because early on, when we were talking about Zip 2, he was right in the thick of the cutting edge of technology. But when it came to everything since then, he's been out ahead of it. EVs, nobody was talking EVs when he put half his entire life's money into Tesla. So reusable rockets from a rocket startup, that's insane. And then everything we've seen since then has been like that, where Apple gets rid of the phone jack, everyone makes fun of it, and 6 months later they get rid of the phone jack. Apple gets rid of the wall plugs, everyone makes fun of it, 6 months later everyone gets rid of the wall plug. Tesla says we're building bots. It's laughable. It's ridiculous. Now there's 100 companies doing it. Autonomy, it can't be done. There's only a couple companies looking at it. Now there's 100. And all of them are convinced that they've got the solution, because once again, Elon is stepping out in front of what's possible to show what can be done. And It would be nice to invest in those 100 robotic companies if I could find one that has the talent, that has the resources, that has the ability to manufacture them at scale once they're done and to gather the training data. But I only know one company that does that, all of that, and I'm already invested.
Yeah, I think, yeah, one interesting thing too was, so I met this guy. It was actually, where was, I think I forgot. It was on my trip, but either way, this guy was a huge fan of Tesla. He has a Model 3, but then he told me that his wife would not buy a Tesla because of Elon. And I pretty much just said, well, have you guys ever driven a Volkswagen? Do you guys wear Nike shoes? I mean, you just can't, like, it's just, Elon is now that edge case. And I think it goes to show, like, what the media is capable of doing and driving for people that are just reading clickbait. But really that type of mentality, and I've been guilty of that type of mentality on certain things, but where you just assume like, oh, well, yeah, I'm not going to associate with that person because they support that person. But it's just like, you can't have that blanket statement, because again, there's stuff that you own or things that you buy that technically would, support certain things. I mean, VW was started what is now known as, or back then as something different, but it was started by Hitler. And so it's just one of those things where, and Nike has their child safety issues with all their child labor issues, right? So it's just ongoing. And so why is Elon that scapegoat? And the sad thing is, this is nothing new. He has been, the person that the media can, because again, it's Tesla, as we all know, does not spend millions and millions of dollars on advertising, or tens of millions of dollars on advertising. And so they are the free target. That's how it's always been. And versus like some of these companies can't, put GM, Chevy on, throw shade at them because they spend tens of millions of dollars on ads on their platforms. So, yeah, it's just an interesting time. And, ultimately we will see what happens. Yeah, go ahead,
I
Brian.
want to push back on that a little bit. On the bad news front, I spent months analyzing every headline every day in a spreadsheet. And what I found was that while Tesla does get the worst headlines, it's Ford gets vastly better headlines than GM. GM's headlines were almost as bad as Tesla's, despite the fact that GM and Ford spend almost an identical amount of money. So the correlation between what they pay and the headlines they get are not directly related. SpaceX also spends no money advertising and gets very good headlines and very clickbait-free headlines. And it's because the type of people who want to read a SpaceX story are not susceptible to clickbait and sensationalism. These are, fact-based people who love rockets and science and everything that's verifiable and real, and they won't fall for that nonsense. So and then of course at the top, the very best headlines you get are BYD, because their headlines originate within China, where the media is more tightly controlled, and the vast majority of headlines we end up seeing are distilled from those headlines. So if you start with nothing but good news, it's very easy to do your regurgitated reblog of just good news, and it goes down that way. So while there is absolutely some truth to the fact that paying for good headlines will get you good headlines, it's not universal, and the correlation is not quite direct.
Yeah, I think it's probably just coverage, right? I think it may not necessarily be the headlines, but for example, like my Cybertruck. I mean, when have you ever owned another car and someone has come up to you and said, "Hey, did you get that recall fixed?" I own a Cybertruck, obviously.
Never.
Even Teslas, right? Like I would have my uncle in Texas, he texting me, even on my Model 3. So I'm not talking just the Cybertruck, which is again polarizing. But here the Cybertruck had 4,000 pedals recalled. I had at least 10 people ask me if I got it replaced yet, whereas Ford does half a million recalls on the fact that this car could actually like explode because it's an ICE car. So that's probably maybe what I mean is, sure, there's going to be headlines, but it's just amplification and coverage is probably the key there. But yeah, I think you made a good point on that for sure. All right, I think so. We have about 8 minutes, but I wanted to jump into this Tesla. I'll pass this to Joe real quick, and then we have a clip to show as well.
So this is a Tesla Semi. You know, they're transporting battery packs from Giga Nevada to supply the Fremont factory, and this is crazy. Like, well, for one, we all know that this is the best thing Tesla could do, right? Is the Semi. The fact that semis haven't gone EV way earlier than the cars is kind of crazy, considering its impact on the global the effect of people. So it's just wild. But I also had this came along with the fact of what's happening in Lathrop, and there's just so many freaking mega packs that they're making. But I thought this was like very interesting to see, and then let's see the video to accompany it. Tesla. So, I mean, I'm really curious what Jeff thinks about this, because you're talking about supply chain, you're talking about getting batteries and things everywhere. I know Brian is a supply chain expert as well. So curious what you guys are, when you guys see this and you see it like moving in a fleet, what do you guys think?
I see a point where trucking can start, actually moving some business over from rail. It's not instantaneously, it's not right away, but I do see a convergence from a cost structure perspective, from a capacity perspective, and if this nationwide charging fleet, if this can get underway, this charging system can really get progress going for that. If we can really get progress going for that, I could see a point where the cost per mile on this can get to a point where you would actually want to move more cargo to electric trucking versus rail, and I think that would be a big thing. Obviously, there's other concerns around that, but that's one of the things I see. And the other thing is, I went to the Semi event when it was unveiled, and there's a lot of excitement, but it was kind of a soft launch. I walked around, I'm like, okay, this isn't a factory yet. This is, they're basically, there's a couple of years of basically in-field testing that has to be done to dial in a product like this. But I believe the product that actually goes into production it's the hardware itself, but think about the software that's on it. Think about the fleet management side of it as well, which Tesla has people looking at, and I think it's going to be something very special. I think analysts are sleeping on it. I mean, I think Tesla is quote unquote behind what they said they originally would do. But again, this is like, well, what are you comparing them to? Like who has electric semis at scale and profitably making money? So I'm excited for this portion of the business for Tesla. I think it does have supply chain implications, as you mentioned, Joe, and in terms of the cost per mile and when is there crossover from rail, and does this actually allow it?
So yeah, those are all very good points. And the big one to me is, it is late. There's no arguing it's late. But to me, this is like getting into launch mode. This is your front end's lowering. You're getting into cheetah. Do you want to release the truck now and just start moving, or do you want to have a good launch? And the closer it is to perfection, the better, of course. The other companies are making trucks with 100, 200 miles of range, which is fantastic for hauling cargo from the port to the warehouse or the port to the rail yard, but it's useless for over half of applications. So we need, in order to make this a do everything truck, it needs to be able to do more, and it still won't be able to do everything. The big advantage over rail, of course, is that A truck goes all the way to your loading dock. Very few loading docks in the US have rail access. That last mile is always going to be there. And in terms of moving the batteries from Sparks to Fremont, you're talking an elevation change of something like 4,500 feet to basically sea level. You're carrying more weight downhill than you are going back the other direction. So this is the perfect use case for an electric truck. We've seen mining operations where they go up a hill with an empty giant truck and load it full of sand, gravel, whatever, bring it down the hill, regenerating, and never have to charge over the course of use, because it generates more power carrying the weight down the hill than it needs to go back up it empty. Obviously, we're not getting quite that far with 1 mile of elevation change over the course of hundreds of miles, but it is still an interesting use case. These are coming. They're coming soon. And, this is Usain Bolt lacing up his sneakers while the kids are halfway around the track. If those companies are not profitable, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many units they move if they're not making money on them. And it's unclear that anyone is making money on electric semis at this time. And it is abundantly clear that that is Tesla's only objective, is to make a truck that's so good at such a good price that it dominates.
100%. Well, we are getting close to the top of the hour and, need to do a quick time check, but a couple of big things that you need to continue to be aware of. This one. So make sure you vote. That is the biggest thing, right? You are in power of making your voice heard. We need every vote, whether you vote for or against. Just vote. Make sure your voice is heard. I know there's a lot more obstacles for those of our followers that are potentially in the EU, but do what you can, get your voice heard. Make sure that your bank knows that you are frustrated if you cannot vote. And I think things can potentially really change. And, I think this is a good reminder to just check where your stock is too, where you're holding. You don't want to have both hands tied behind your back in crucial moments like this. So I think make sure you go vote on this for the upcoming shareholder meeting. Last thing is actually everyone on stage right now will be a speaker at the Tesla Takeover this upcoming July. We couldn't be more excited for the people that are coming and for the amazing speakers, activities, festivities, and really, again, just bringing the community together. It's going to be truly an amazing experience. So come geek out, maybe meet your favorite content creators, influencers, vloggers, whatever you want to call them. Meet some of the amazing people driving change like Franz von Holzenhausen and Jared Isaacman. Go to xtakeover.com and, we can't wait to see you this upcoming summer. And hopefully, again, you can be there. Thanks again. And we will see you this upcoming week. Thanks again, Brian. Make sure you give him a follow. Go check out his channel. Make sure you subscribe to him. Go check out his channel and all of the amazing work he's doing. Same thing with Jeff, the Jeff Lutz on X, Joe as well. I was going to say Cybertruckless, but no, he has a Cybertruck now. So it's just one of those things. And I think, Joe, when is the swag when is that going to be released? Do you know?
We're waiting probably 2 weeks out. So
okay.
2 weeks.
By the way, it was a
event.
hit in Europe. Everyone was like, "Hey, where do I get one of those?" So it was, it was definitely a hit. I think we'll have to figure out that maybe at the next Tesla Takeover Europe, whether that's next year or the year after. We'll have to figure out how to get some swag preemptively over there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everyone, have a great week. And thanks again for contributing to the channel. Please make sure you hit like and subscribe. Give the people that contributed today a follow or a subscribe button. Hit that subscribe button. And we will see you guys next week. Later, everyone.
Thanks, guys.